Hello, welcome to my studio. This is Mr. Don. I'm sitting here and I'm going to be working today on a Seascape, part of one of the projects we're doing in class. I want to share with you some ideas and thoughts, and I want you to see how I do it so that it will help you do it yourself at home or in the classroom. Basically, I'm going to demonstrate this in the classroom again, so I want you to have heart. It's going to take a while. It's not going to look great the first couple of times, but then it will slowly start to come along, and you're just going to slowly get this. So don't worry about this. Don't be frustrated with this. It's very easy to be frustrated at this kind of stuff, so I don't want you to be frustrated. So we're going to start off today. I'm starting on a white piece of cardstock as we're doing in class. And again, I'm trying to keep everything the same we're doing in class. We're working on a seascape. You can see the picture up above here, and it's a picture that I've put on the wall for you. We have a very strong diagonal. Winslow Homer, who's one of my major influences in seascapes, has painted many paintings in diagonals because you've got this clash. Diagonals usually add some dynamics to your canvas, and you've got water coming in, and there's these big eruptions of water here. Is that one force hitting another? A movable force is hitting a solid object, and you're creating this big splash, and it's very dramatic. And I'll go and I'll sit and I'll watch the ocean for hours, just sitting there watching these big splashes and watching all this stuff. So I find it fascinating. So today what we're going to do is we're going to create a seascape. You can have a horizontal oriented seascape, but again, I tend to go for the dramatic here, and so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to establish my horizon. I have a high horizon. Now, what do I mean by that is that my horizon is high on my canvas, on my medium here, the object I'm painting on. I can't think of the word right now. But because I'm looking down at it. When you're looking down at something, the horizon moves up. As you're looking up at things, the horizon would move down. So right now, I'm looking down at this. So the horizon is going to be high. So I've got a nice high horizon here. And I have a little bit of an indication of some land over here. This is Hampton area down in there. Genis Beach is down over here someplace. So again, this scene you can see these rocks if you went to Wallace Sand State Beach, and as soon as you go past it, you take this very right angled turn, and I'm painting at that point. So if you get out, there's a place to park there. You can park for a couple of hours, and you can walk around and look at the rocks. It's kind of tricky rocks. They're dangerous. You got to be careful there. Anytime you're painting on the rocks, you got to be careful because of your footing. There's a lot of places to get your feet caught in here, and wet rocks, slippery rocks are very difficult to walk on. But right here, if you can see, this is probably between here and the bottom is probably about 10 feet or more, and it's even higher where I'm standing. So you can fall fairly a good distance there, so you want to be careful. But there's great places to view the water all along there, little stone beaches and stuff. So I'm going to be working on this diagonal. This is my dark. As you can see, if you squint at this, that's the darkest part of the painting is all in here. So I'm going to draw it in, and I've done this painting many times, and especially this view. I've got different ways of looking at this, and I've been fascinated by this. I'd love to go to Gloucester, but Gloucester is kind of out of my range right now. I have things I have to do, so I can't get there and spend a lot of time there. But I'm going to draw in this dark, and I'm just scumbling this paint in. I call it's scumbling around. And scumbling is a paint technique. It's usually associated with layering colors, but right now I'm just using it. I'm painting in sort of almost like a house painter. I'm getting the stuff on the canvas. I want to get all my darks. I'm going to paint from dark to light. So I'm starting off with all the dark areas first. Then I'm going to go to the lighter areas, which is with sea. The sky's the lightest, and notice that the sky is even darker than the breaking clouds, the breaking water here. So again, this is what my goal is, to get all this covered in one round. You notice there's a lot of different colors in the rocks. That's going to come later. I'm not going to worry about that right now. The sea is a particular shade of green, grayish green. And when I took this picture with the intent on painting this, and I framed this in my camera lens. I used my camera lens as a canvas. I looked through the canvas. So I've planned this a long time. Before I ever brought it to my studio, before I ever had it developed or printed, I looked at this, and I looked at it and I said, this is how I want it. I had the horizon high. I waited for the right wave, and then I snapped a picture. I've got hundreds of pictures of this place. What you can also do is you use a framing tool. This is just a simple mat. I picked this up at a thrift shop, and you use this to frame in the picture. You can isolate different sections of this. This is basically the eye. This window is your canvas, and you can arrange your canvas to have this the way you want it, where you want to do this. So if you go out, the next best thing to do, probably the best thing, better than taking a picture, is to draw it. So you take this, you look at it, you frame it, and then you draw it within this frame, and you get a nice accurate drawing, and you get it designed the way you want it to be designed. Where do you want these things? I'm painting fat over thin. Now, what that means is I'm painting thick paint over thin paint. So this is my first round is going to be mostly like a wash. A wash is just a thin veil of color put on places, but I don't want to get too thick too early, especially with acrylic, especially with any kind of paint. Doesn't make for a good painting experience. So and it just muddles the colors, and it creates textures that you don't want. You want your textures with your lighter colors. And I'm painting light over dark. So this rocks are going to get nothing but lighter from here on in. So I'm going to be painting them with lighter colors. And I want those, you can show the textures of stuff. I don't want to show the textures of the dark spots. You can't really see what the texture is in those crevices. I want the texture to come out in the lighted areas. So so the next place I'm going is to the ocean. I'm going to paint the ocean. That's my middle color. You've got a light, a middle, and then a dark. So I'm going to paint, it's a grayish green, so I'm starting off with green, and I'm going to add a little bit of red. Why do I add red? Blue and yellow make green, and I'm adding a little red. We're talking about the primary colors here, and in the primary colors, here's the palette. We're using white, yellow, red, blue, and black. That's all we're using. From these 5 colors, we can make every single color. If you remember that exercise we did when we were painting in those circles, we painted every single color, all the commercial colors that way. We painted every single color that you could find in there. It was an important exercise. You probably won't appreciate it now, but you will later on. And so I'm mixing a greenish color. I'm testing it. It's a little too dark just yet. This is a middle color. And I'm painting in my color. The sea it's cloudy today when I took this picture. There's a lot of, there's some clouds in the air, a lot of atmosphere. And the clouds, the clouds are dulling all the colors, and don't be afraid to go over and keep everything kind of blur the edges, okay? You don't want to have really sharp edges, although these rocks are sharp. We don't need to have them crazy sharp. I'm going to have some whites in here, so I'm not worried about this right now. All right, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe out that color from mixture, and I'm going to go and I'm going to make the sky color. Now the sky has some clouds in it, and what I usually do and this is something that I do. You don't have to do this, but some people will paint the whole sky blue, and then they'll add the clouds. I tend to paint the clouds and add the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking some white, little bit of white, adding a little bit of blue to it. And I want a light neutral color. Now, this is going to be the color of my my sky area, but I'm going to add a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red. Now, why do I do that? Yellow and red make orange. Orange is the complementary color of blue, and it's going to gray this color out. I want my paintings to have color. I want them to have, I can warm or cool this whole thing with color. I can't do it with black and white. I can't just, I've got to have color to do that. Using complementary colors makes the painting a lot better. And so here I'm adding my sky. And that's fairly white. It's atmospheric. It's not perfect yet, but this is, like I said, this is only my first round. We're going to go many rounds with this, probably 3 or 4 anyways, to get this where I want this to be. So I'm going to finish off the sky a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of, take some white, and I'm going to have the beautiful blue. This is it's a nice blue. It's a generic color. It's a generic paint company, but it makes a really light blue, really nice blue. And again, in the learning process, you don't have to have $50 a tube paints. They'll come later. Right now, I'm using very inexpensive colors, and they're disposable. I don't care what happens to them. So in this now, I'm not painting the light sky. I'm going to paint this a blue, because I want my sky to be blue. And I'm showing some clouds, and clouds are water vapor. When you're outside, and I've said this many times before, when you're outside and you exhale and you see that puff of moisture come out of your mouth, that's a cloud. And that's all a cloud is. If you paint a cloud with a very hard edge, it's not going to look right. And so you don't want it to have that hard edge. And now I'm going to go back in a bit, and I'm going to just lighten the clouds. I have a rough idea what the cloud is. The clouds, notice this diagonal is mimicking this other diagonal. The diagonal of the rocks is being echoed here. And fairly intentional to some extent. But it shows a break in the clouds, and it does show some stuff happening in the sky. So I've got a lot of my elements down here already. I'm going to start painting in the rocks. The rocks, I'm going to do a mixture of red and yellow, orange. And I'm going to mix a lot of white with that because I want a nice light color. You've got some nice light browns here. You've got some light grays. I'm going to take my sky color and I'm going to add some stuff to it to make it... I don't want to go too bright with this because right now I'm not painting this with the intention of having any sunlight pouring down on this, but I'm mixing a little bit of black, a little bit of orange, red, yellow, and a little bit of black, and some white to try to lighten it a little bit because these rocks are light colored. Granite is, this granite's along the shore is gray, very grayish and light gray. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the blue I was using, I'm going to use that again, and I'm going to mix that to make a nice gray out of that. And so I've got a couple of colors here that I can start using in the rocks. I'm going to paint the rocks now. Just add a little bit of something there. A little bit of black. But I like my grays to be kind of warm. I don't use black and white basically for that. And we're using big brushes to small brushes. I'm using a big brush to start laying in some of the rock. So I got a rock there, rock, and I can take this and I let the colors I already have there be the they can be make the crevices like that. So I'm using the brush expressively here to get some of the rocks. The rocks, and especially this place, are different than most rocks. They're very stratified. If you go to Rockport, they're going to be kind of round, and the Gloucester rocks, they're really kind of rounded and well worn. These rocks don't look so well worn. They're kind of there's a lot of strata. It looks like they're tipped on edge at some point, and they're very sharp edged as opposed to the rocks that you see if you went to Gloucester. And if you notice, I'm just making little dashes and dots here to try to give you the understanding that there's rocks here. I'm letting, as Bob Ross would probably say, I'm making some happy accidents. And I know I have a couple people who, if they watched this and heard me make that reference to Bob Ross, they'd laugh. But I almost bought a T-shirt the other day. Had a picture of Bob Ross on it. There's no life. There are no mistakes in life, just happy accidents. And that was a great philosophy to go by, I guess. I don't know. God rest his soul. But anyway, so I've given some indication of the rocks. You get an idea of the rocks. I'm not painting. This isn't my final go. I'm painting dark to light. So I'm still in the phase of darker colors. I tend to jump forward a little bit sometimes and see what a lighter color would look like if I'm heading in the right direction. And rocks are never all big blobs. They're broken. Look at all the different nooks and crannies in here, and there's things happening and all kinds of stuff going on. So there's a ton of stuff you can do in here to make the designs look much better. And that's what you're here to do. You're here to make the design. You're designing something, and you make it look appealing. So I've got some things I have to do now. I've got a couple of details I want to take care of. I want to detail. I got to get. This is where I put my horizon. I've got to fix a little bit. So I'm going to go into that and fix it. And I got to go back. I got to remake that color. And yellow. It was a green. If you remember what I was saying earlier, it was a green with some white. Don't be afraid to use colors. And this is going to be a brighter color. I'll just grade it out a little bit. Water is highly reflective, and it's going to reflect the sky. So I'm not worried about that so much. And this is what the fat paint is. That paint has been applied fat. So we don't want that. We want it nice and light. We want it nice and thin. And I want to make my horizon line. People will get all bent out of shape if your horizon lines aren't straight, or if your houses aren't straight. And there's a lot of different things that people will get their nose out of joint as if it's not, doesn't look right. So they'll get their nose out of joint, and my nose keeps showing up on this stupid video here, but no, well, what are you going to do? So one thing you know about me is I have a large schnoz here. So anyways, I'm going to paint in the water now. In the water, I'm going to do very carefully because I don't want this to be all over the place. The water is not just pure white, but I've got this big splash. It's kind of in the middle, and I'm going to actually emphasize it off to the side a little bit. I don't want it... Try not to have yourself putting odd shapes in the water. It's very easy. I almost thought I was drawing a rabbit here the other day when I was doing this another time. So the water is always traveling in a distance. So this water is coming from left to right. And I'm breaking the plane here for interest. And again, water is not a solid object. It's probably one of the most forceful objects in the world. Nothing can withstand water. I've seen big oak piers get destroyed by it, and it's taken down many a strong, sturdy vessel. Yet it is still it's amazing. It's an amazing compound and what it can do, and it's absolutely beautiful. So I have my wave hitting the rocks here, and I'm going to add some other stuff in the background. And again, I'm adding some details here. I just want to put everything where it should be. And get a feel of a moving ocean here. And at this point, I'm not too far away from calling this this round complete. You've got water coming down the rocks. I could start getting crazy with details. It never comes straight down like I just did it there, but it's always pooling around, and it's always swirling and fuzzy, and there's no defined. You're not going to define this, and as you'd think it is. There's just a lot going on, and you got to watch. You got to sit there and watch it. And I'm adding some fatter strokes of this now. Again, I've got very stormy seas, and this is I've seen this. You go again, take a ride if you can to Wallace Sand State Beach or along Ocean Boulevard during the storms when it's stormy out. There's going to be a surf this week, so you want to get out there and look at this. And it's just an amazing thing. You can watch it right from the road, right out of the comfort of your car, and you can sit there and watch the wonders of nature. It's getting a little bit too wet. If you notice, see how my strokes are kind of mixing with the stuff underneath. So I don't want to do that. So I don't want my paint doing that. So my sky's in the background. I need a little bit, I need an indication of the land in the background. Again, people you want to look at is Winslow Homer is a great place to look at, a great guy to look at for this. And he painted out of Maine, and the Maine coast is an absolute beautiful place to go and see the power of the ocean. The rocks in Maine, if you look at Homer's paintings, the rocks in Maine are different than the rocks in New Hampshire, which are different than the rocks in Gloucester. And it's just the way things are. And so I'm getting to the point where I'm basically through with this for right now. I've given you indications of this stormy seas here. And I've got basically everything where I want it to be right now. Again, there's no predetermined, defined area for the waves. You got to be careful you don't make them too structured, but because it is just a bunch of water, water foam hitting the rocks. But this I would consider a complete for round one. My next step to go into this would be to make some of these darks really dark. And I can actually do that now to give you an idea of where I'm going with this. But make some of your darks dark, and again, you probably have to go and lighten these. Some of these are probably too dark, but you can see how the whole brings it out a little bit more, brings it right to you. And again, just adding dots. These rocks are very abstract when it comes right down to it. They're very abstract rocks. There's nothing, there's no definition to these rocks. If you say you're going to draw a rock, you literally, if someone asks you to draw a rock, you could draw anything you wanted to draw. There's no definition of a rock. These rocks don't have defined areas. There's no two rocks alike. If you go around the corner of this bend here, you're going to see all kinds of different rocks and different things. Go to Rockport, like I suggested, or Gloucester, and you're going to see some stuff that is just completely different than what it's going to be beyond your description. So again, as we get higher, the rocks get lighter. And again, I'm just using spots of color. There's just bits and pieces. All these are all broken rocks. I try to make them smooth and round. There's actually a couple places here where there'd be some stuff. And as you can see, the rocks kind of come to life now. And there are shapes within shapes, and you want to and again, I try to break up as many of these lines as I possibly can. So basically, this is the end of round one, and I'm stopping just because I don't want this to be a 2-hour video. I'm at 26 minutes now. So again, here we are. We're at the beginning, and if you follow this, you should be able to get to this place. It may take you a little bit longer, obviously, but this is what you kind of where you want to be. You get the feel for the water, the wind, the waves. You get a little bit of everything, and so this is the end of round one on the Seascape. If you have any questions, I've used a strong diagonal to show the conflict of the tension between the two forces hitting each other. And again, this is just a start. We're just starting now, and that's the beauty of this. Is I can go into this and just build on it, and build on it. I can give you a couple of looks. This is another look, the same painting, and it's different. This is oil. As you can see, it's a much different painting, and it's the colors are there. You see all the movement of the water and all that, something in the distance. So you get a lot of different things you can do with this, a lot of different places you can go. Here's the same thing over again. This is the same set of rocks, but I've changed it a little bit. I've made it different. I've emphasized the wave more than the rocks, and I got seagulls and stuff like that. And this is yet another view looking, if I was looking north with this one. And this is oil again, and again using the diagonals, and you've got the diagonals of the wave hitting the diagonals of the rocks, and again it makes for a lot of dynamism. It's a more dynamic composition. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with this. We're going to be learning. We're going to learn still lifes. We're going to learn a whole bunch of things. So I just want you to keep working at it. You're not going to do this without, you have to work at it. There's no two ways. So thank you for watching this, and I'll see you in class.